Happy Thursday evening, everybody. Welcome to this second day of autumn. Yesterday was the autumnal equinox, and day and night was even. It officially ended summer and officially began autumn or fall. It sure feels like it in the air. It's felt like this for a few days, right? It gets kind of cold at night, but the days are still really kind of hot. So I thought I'd take a look at the weather forecast for the next 10 days. And let me pull that up real quick here. You may have already looked at it. I know a lot of people are interested in the weather. Let's see. There it is. Okay. And the weather forecast for Sacramento. So tonight it's going to get down to 59, and that's kind of normal. It's been getting into the 50s at nighttime, but it's been climbing into the 90s during the day. But as you look here, tomorrow it should be 96, and then Saturday 90, and then it's going to drop into the 80s. Tuesday, it's actually got a 16% chance of rain. I'm not going to hold my breath on that, but it's going to be 79 degrees. And so the rest of the next week and part of the week following will be in the high 80s. So it looks like we're beginning a drop in the temperature. So oftentimes we can get, we can get a late summer. It's possible that we've got some warm weather yet ahead of us, but we really need the rain, and the forecast is not for much rain. So we'll see what's going on there. So hope everyone's doing well. Welcome again to It's About Us. And like I like to say, without you, there is no us. So I'm glad you're here. And if you're with me here live, please say hello in the chat so I can say hi back. And if you are watching on the recording, thank you very much, and please leave a comment so that I can respond, because I like to just say thank you in a more personal way than just a general thank you for being here. But if you're not comfortable to say hello, that's okay too. Everything's valid on the internet here. A lot of times A lot of times I like to stay lurking for a long time before I will say hello on something. Yeah, it's just the way I am. And there's my first comment for the evening. And there's my good friend Dave. Hey, Dave. Greetings. Thanks for joining in. I hope all is well in your world. And thanks for climbing on board. I don't know how long you're going to be able to hang out, but we're going to be talking about some COVID news and some homelessness stuff. So that just crossed my path today that I found a little bit not surprising, but it just underscores how hard that topic is to really solve. So, but first, one of the things that I like to try to do is give you a little update on how I'm doing. I had an interesting day, very, very interesting morning, and it's still playing out. So there's nothing I can really share at this point. But something happened this morning, which was an absolute surprise, caught me off guard. I'm not sure that I reacted in a way that was most appropriate. So we'll just have to wait and see how this all plays out. But it's very interesting. And at some point, I hope to share with you all the details, but it sure set the tone for the day for me. Something I've been thinking about all day. So, it's kind of exciting, interesting to me anyway. And I hope to be able to share it with you at some point before too long. So there's not a whole lot new, actually. Actually, you know what? Let me just talk about this a little bit. I didn't plan on it because I didn't think about it till just now. But my good friend Forrest Reed has sponsored a walk for the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation, and that's this Saturday. So I'll be joining him down at William Land Park to go on a walk. And here's another little comment here. Greetings, Cheryl. Good evening. Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. And so far, our little group has raised like $1,700. Most of it coming from Forrest's efforts, it looks like. I've been able to raise $60, so I feel okay about that. But pulmonary fibrosis is something that you acquire. Cystic fibrosis is a genetic disease. But pulmonary fibrosis is something that you can acquire, and there's lots of ways to acquire it. And the number one group of people that come down with pulmonary fibrosis are firefighters. And this is actually the very first walk. It's a disease that's been below the radar for a very long time, but it's something that's been around for a while, and people just haven't been paying a whole lot of attention to it. And so this money will go to research to provide maybe a cure, or at least some type of care for people that have the pulmonary fibrosis. And one of the things that I participate in is we have an outreach to our homeless guests down in the Cathedral Square, and I help to pass out food there at the cathedral. And we also like to hand out extra bottles of water. And recently, water's been hard to come by. And we just really didn't understand why the person that's been purchasing the water thought maybe it was a rigged deal and they were just trying to raise the prices and whatever. But he was talking with, was it his dentist? I think his dentist about it. And the dentist told him that the deal is that the firefighters are getting the lion's share of bottled water right now. They're just consuming lots and lots of bottled water. So there's a little bit of a shortage, at least in Northern California, regarding bottled water. So that's why that's hard to find. I find that very interesting. I hadn't thought about that. It never crossed my mind. but it makes a lot of sense that they would need a lot of water fighting those fires. Yeah. So that was interesting news. So that's pretty much all the new stuff that's going on. I live a pretty stable existence. Not as like in a barn stable, but stable as in not a whole lot new happens from day to day. But I will be going on the walk on Saturday, and I might be doing a Facebook Live kind of a thing as we go for the walk, just to check in and say hi to people. So that'll be fun. I think it starts at 9 a.m., something like that. So, yeah, if you're interested, you can check in and see what happens, see if I'm online. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I don't know. We'll see. Touch and go. Anyway, that brings us to another segment. And I've got a couple of actually, it's one website. It's Capitol Public Radio, which I find they just give lots of really great information. So what we're going to go to now is a COVID minute, which I just like looking at this picture. I love the turquoise against the purple and the red. Just a very beautiful, whoever did that did a really good job. And not me, but I really like that picture. For a deadly virus, it sure is beautiful, But anyway, so the first website I want to look at today, is like I like to do, is where are we for Sacramento County? So let's take a look at where we're at with Sacramento County as far as the number of cases and all that sort of thing. Let's see what we've got here. Did I get the right one? Oh, yep, sure did. So check this out. Let me pull my face off of here so you can see it a little bit better. There we go. And I'm going to pull that off of there because you don't need that. Well, I guess it doesn't really matter. Do you want to see the menu or not? Yeah, let's put it back up there. So My Life and Welcome to It's the name of my podcast, which I'm getting closer and closer to season 3. So stay tuned for that. Anyway, let's take a look here. What have we got? We have got a serious downward trend. We're at 295 hospitalized. We're going in the right direction. And I don't know if you saw the headlines, but California has the best hospitalization rate in the country. So we are setting the standard for the country. We're doing really great. And the ICU patients number is on the decline. That we expected to see that. We just need to, hunker down and continue doing what we're doing because it's still too many. We need to get that number down below 100, and I think we can do it. I really do. I don't know what we can attribute it to. It's probably, people getting vaccinated, people wearing their masks and staying distanced and not going out unless they have to, and just being smart about it. So I think we're in a good place. And I saw another article this evening, and basically they were saying that the country as a whole is doing fairly well, that the numbers are starting to decline. That's a good thing, right? That's a really, really good thing. Because we don't want to have happen what's been happening. So let me pull this off, and let's take a look at another article from Capitol Public Radio. I was looking for some articles that talked about this particular subject. This is actually the Washington Post, so forgive me here. We'll get back to Capitol Public Radio when we talk about homelessness in Sacramento. But this is from the Washington Post, and this is on crisis standards of care, which I wasn't really up on. So that's an ICU patient right there. You can see he's on his belly. They discovered early on that by putting someone on their belly, that gravity would expand their lungs and help them breathe. So even though they're intubated, having them in this position actually helps their lungs to expand because gravity pulls it, opens them up. So that was a discovery that we made that's helping people breathe. But so here's the deal. Let's look at that headline again. Hospitals overwhelmed by COVID are turning to crisis standards of care. What does that mean? Alaska is the most recent state. Idaho has also done this. And I know there's other states that have done it, and so we'll get to who they are. But we're looking at what's rationing of medical care. And crisis standards of care is the old idea of triage. I remember watching the TV show MASH, and when military personnel, soldiers were being, helicoptered in to the MASH unit, that the doctors had to triage the patients. The ones that were most likely to survive got care. The ones that didn't look like they were going to make it didn't, because they had limited resources and they had to do the best they could for the people who they thought would be the most survivable. That's what we're looking at. That's what crisis standards of care is all about, as to whether or not this is survivable. So let's take a look and see what we've got here. Healthcare systems can prioritize patients for scarce resources. Let me see if I can get this up here a little larger. Of course I can. There we go. But we'll have to scroll down here so we can read it. Okay, based largely on their likelihood of survival and even deny treatment. The decisions affect COVID and non-COVID patients. And I know in some states they've already seen people who have died because they were unable to get any care because of this crisis standards of care policy. So some healthcare providers in Montana have turned to crisis standards of care, and the Hawaii's governor has released healthcare workers from liability if they have to ration care, but they haven't actually declared the crisis standards of care yet. Some states don't have it. Others are just creating their own plans because it looks like that's the way the nation's going, which is very, very sad. Very, very, very sad. Let's keep looking on down here. We only end up needing crisis standards of care when our other systems have utterly failed. That's in Boston. What does it look like? Let's see. Physician Kristen Solana Walkinshaw told Washington Post last week that her team had 4 patients who needed continuous kidney dialysis and only 2 machines available. And I think that one of those 4 patients who were unable to get on the machine died. The other person is survived, but they're in critical care. So that was a life or death situation for them. In Idaho, crisis care standards may mean that patients end up treated in hallways or tents. Elective or non-urgent surgeries have been delayed at one hospital, and there may be fewer nurses and doctors caring for more patients. It's a pretty serious thing. Let's fly down here and see if we can get to, let's see, how are patients prioritized? Yeah, it's a hard thing. This is putting a lot of stress on physicians in having to make these decisions. They go into the field of medicine to save lives, and now they're being forced to decide who gets care and who doesn't, which can mean a life or death situation. So it goes into it here. Most typically start by scoring the health of major organs, such as the brain, heart, kidney, and liver. They may take into account people's chances of recovery, their life expectancy, and even their essential worker status. So it's like all things being equal, if someone is deemed as a more essential worker than someone else, they may get care where the other one doesn't. I don't think that's a really good qualifier personally, because that puts an interesting price tag on life and our worth as persons. This is just an untenable situation. And I'll just add, I don't know if the article mentions it or not, This is mostly on because of unvaccinated people who are coming down with COVID-19. Exclusion criteria can instruct healthcare workers to withhold care from certain groups, such as patients in cardiac arrest, for instance, or those with severe dementia. It's crazy. Very, very difficult. It's adding a lot of stress to doctors' lives, and I think there's interviews out there where they talk about how this is affecting them personally. Very, very difficult. Most state plans say that the doctor directly caring for a patient should not be making the call on what limited resources that person gets, according to an academic review of plans published last year. And some lay out an appeals process, which is, I get it, but how much time does a person have for you to make that decision? Some decisions might need to be made quickly, and you don't have time to make an appeal, or there may not be another doctor to make the decision. It may have to be, so who knows? It goes into some controversial issues. And let's see if we come down here. There's a whole discussion on people with disabilities. Oh, here we go. Arizona and New Mexico were the only states to declare crisis standards of care earlier in the pandemic. But it says resources have been rationed without any official shift to crisis standards. So we've got, what do we've got? We've got Alaska and Idaho, Arizona, New Mexico, parts of Hawaii, parts of Montana. And I have a feeling that Mississippi, Louisiana are going to be right there real soon. Check this out. As a winter coronavirus surge slammed Los Angeles, for instance, ambulance crews were instructed to save oxygen and to treat patients on the scene rather than bring them to the hospital where they had little hope of survival. Gosh, can you imagine having to make these kinds of decisions? It's just not right. Let's see. Did I shoot past? It looks like Arkansas is getting ready to pull that and do the specific standards of care. Arkansas is up next, looks like, maybe. Yeah. Let's go back up here to the controversial section, because I did notice when I was looking at this earlier that here we go. What parts of the crisis plans are most controversial? Disability rights groups have filed complaints about crisis standards of care that they argue amount to illegal discrimination, and others have raised concerns about discrimination against the elderly. Using the categories of age to determine whether someone receives care is wrong, plain and simple. AARP Idaho State Director Lupe Whistle wrote in a recent post criticizing Idaho's decision to make age a tiebreaker for limited resources. The estimation of potential life years an individual has does not equate to the value of a life. And that brings up it's a whole moral and ethical question, right? How do we value a life? How do we determine one life is more important than another life? How do we do that? I think that for the longest time, there's a lot of issues of life in this country that we are wrestling with, many of them. And we don't always do a good job. And I'm not sure we even have the metrics available to make these decisions without a serious, strong, ethical and moral guidelines. Very difficult. Very, very difficult. So, I think we're seeing something in the United States that we've never seen before. I hope that once we get through this, we never see it again. But it's honestly, it's all about the unvaccinated. They have, clogged up I'm going to say clogged up, but honestly, they have taken over a lot of the ICU beds. They have become the patients of emergency, and it's making it very difficult. And now we're entering into the flu season. I don't know if you saw any flu notifications, but flu season basically begins at the end of the month. People are being suggested to get your flu shot. September 28th, I think, is the county's giving free flu shots for people who don't have means. But if you've got insurance, then, schedule yourself to go and get your flu shot. It should be available somewhere. It's important. The COVID vaccine is not going to cover flu, and vice versa. Wearing a mask and keeping your hands clean and distancing, that will help. It sure helped last year. We didn't have much of a flu season at all. We were seeing a rise in flu cases. They're expecting more because so many people are going out without masks and aren't really paying a lot of attention to many of the protocols. So hopefully, as we here in Sacramento County are working to get that curve down even further, we do a good job of keeping ourselves healthy from the flu. So, yeah, but we don't want to get into a situation of that crisis standards of care. We're far from that, which is good, because we just don't want to see people put in those types of situations to decide. It basically comes down in many cases who lives and who dies. We shouldn't have to make those choices. How does that weigh on a person's conscience to know that they've made a choice and gave someone care, denied care to another person, and another person ends up dying because they couldn't get the care? That's a heavy burden. I wouldn't wish that on anyone, not on anyone. So let's keep it up. Keep the mask on. Get vaccinated if you haven't done it. They have approved, apparently, an emergency use of the Pfizer vaccine for people 65 and up, or people that are vulnerable, immunocompromised, and that sort of thing. I'm 65, but I've pretty much but I wouldn't be eligible to November anyway, because they're saying 8 months. That it's not safe to stack the vaccines too soon, and especially don't mix them. So if you got Pfizer before, you're going to want to get Pfizer again. If you got Moderna before, you want to get Moderna again. That's going to be really important, I think, not to mix the vaccines, because they're not identical. They work differently, right? And it's only a booster, so you want to boost what you already have. You don't want to start something different, something new. But I'm going to hold off until more of the world has access to the vaccine. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and I found it very, very strange. There was this young woman, and I think she was from the Philippines, and she was going to go to Johns Hopkins University, and she was in the Philippines, and Johns Hopkins University stipulated that the students had to be vaccinated. So she got the vaccine that was available in the Philippines for her, and it was the AstraZeneca, and fully vaccinated. And she got to the U.S. and all of a sudden finds out that Johns Hopkins has changed their policy, and now they're saying that they will only accept FDA-approved vaccines. And AstraZeneca is not approved by the FDA, so it didn't count. And they're saying that stacking vaccines isn't safe. They're not. The doctors aren't sure. They think that it might be okay, but there's not enough data for them to make a decision, so they're not going to say that it's safe yet to stack Pfizer, Moderna, or J&J vaccine on top of the AstraZeneca. They just don't know what might happen, but it means that she can't attend the university. Apparently there's a bill before Congress, at least they're working on it, that will allow any form of vaccine to be accepted, not just FDA-approved vaccines, so that people who are planning to come to university here in the United States from overseas, if they're vaccinated from a separate vaccine, that it would be accepted and valid. I think that's the right decision, just based on how this is going global. And I also have heard that the Biden administration has allocated 1 billion or 2 doses of the vaccine to be shipped worldwide, globally. So that's going to help a lot too. So I'm encouraged that people are looking at this from a more global perspective. It's not just the U.S. that needs to be vaccinated. It's great that we started here. That's fine. We helped foot the bill for the research, and I get it. But now that we've reached what seems like it may be a saturation point where most of the people who are currently unvaccinated are unvaccinated by choice. They don't plan on being vaccinated. And so if we have reached that saturation point, now it's time to start looking at getting extra doses out to the rest of the world that don't have the same access that we've had. So I'm encouraged. So hopefully by the time November rolls around, I'll feel better about getting my booster shot. Yeah, that's how that works. But meanwhile, I'm going to start looking at getting a flu shot. That'll be next on the agenda. So thanks again for joining me this evening as we, talk about COVID, and it's not exactly entertaining news, but I think it's important that we stay informed and we encourage each one another, and that we look at how things are going so we can be encouraged that as a society, as a community, we are moving in the right direction, and I think we are. So that's really great news. But something that was a little bit troubling popped up on my radar today. So let's go take a look at that. We're going to go back to Capital Public Radio, which I thoroughly enjoy, because they just do a lot of good local news. And this has to do with the homelessness issue. And the headline reads, as Sacramento opens new navigation center for unhoused people, a new lawsuit threatens to block other shelters from moving forward. This came out on Wednesday. That would be yesterday. Here's a shot of the inside of the shelter. It's under the freeway. It's like X and Alhambra, that area there, between the WX freeway, underneath there. It's more of a dormitory style. It's meant to be transitional. It's not meant to be a permanent situation at all. But there are some lawsuits. So I guess there's 5 tiny home sites that are planned under the WX freeway. Tiny homes would be more of a it still could be transitional, but at least it could end up being a more of a permanent situation. I don't know. It depends on how they build them. But the X Street Center, which is open, can only house up to 100 people at a time, and can house up. So it sounds like, and that's one of the criticisms is that it's warehousing people. They're just housing people, right? It's a low barrier shelter. People can come as they are with their pets, possessions, and partners. And there are no criminal background or sobriety checks they have to pass. But there are rules, right? So Amani Sawires, the Chief Operating Officer, Volunteers America, runs it. There she is. She says, you can't have weapons. You can't do anything that's going to harm the community. But we really are about harm reduction. We don't have a zero tolerance policy on anything. The rules that we have here are really around safety. So, and you can see the outside of the shelter that's built there. They interviewed one individual. Her name's Marcie Pompey. She's 60 years old, and she has 5 dogs, 2 of which are hers, 3 of which are her mother's. And she can't go into the shelter. She sees her dogs as her family. There she is there. She's somewhere near the shelter. She's been unhoused for 3 years, born and raised here in Sacramento. She's living near the new Navigation Center. Outreach teams talked with her. And her situation is that whereas the dogs can be in the cage, and that's where they need to be, They can be there with the person, but they need to be in a cage. She can't sleep without them. So they have to be loose so that she can sleep. So it's not, and there's a kennel, right? So it's not a workable situation for her. The pets receive veterinary care, but they aren't allowed to sleep in the dorms with the guests. So, and there aren't any shelters, I don't think, that allow that. So she's pretty much, at this point, chosen to stay out of the shelter. It's kind of interesting because they do provide some training there. There will be social workers on site, substance use services, mental health services, a culinary skills academy with the training facilities training kitchen, and a partnership with American Legion High School, among other services. Their goal is to serve about 200 people in the first year, 100 every 6 months, or whenever housing can be found for them. That's where they're at right now. Volunteers of America is doing outreach and is helping to manage the site. Okay, so let's go ahead and scroll on down. So there's a shot there of the inside. This would be like the shower facility. All right. And when I first saw it, I thought, oh, shoot, there's not a whole lot of privacy. But these are, you can see the shower curtains are just hanging up so you can see the inside of the shower more easily. Right? So people can get there. There's a bed. There's a place for them to shower. Here's the issues. So the lawsuit leveled against the city, because there's a big plan. The city adopted a plan, right? And here's some of the concerns. They're going to be sheltered underneath the freeway, and that the city was wrong when it determined that those sites were exempt from an environmental impact review under the California Environmental Quality Act. The lawsuit, first reported by the Bee, noted the dangers of exposing hundreds of unhoused people to noise and air pollution. It said the sites went against air agencies' recommendations for siting residential buildings. One of the things I remember taking a look at back when I was working was respiratory illnesses and where people lived. And the highest rates of respiratory illness were places that were along freeway corridors. And understandably so, because of all the pollution from the freeway. So, and it's not just noise. I mean, I used to live on U Street, only a few blocks from the freeway. And at first, I could hear the freeway. But after a while, I got used to it. And I just couldn't hear it anymore. So the noise is one thing, but you can get used to it. But I was far enough away that the decibels weren't high enough to cause any hearing damage. However, if you're right underneath the freeway, it's going to be loud, right? So it would be important to do a decibel study to see if any hearing damage could be incurred. But the main thing is the air pollution. There's just no getting away from it. There's absolutely no way to get away from it when you're living right there, that close underneath the freeway. That is going to be dangerous. So I understand this lawsuit completely. And it would have been nice for them to have done the environmental impact report. Even though it would have delayed building the site, at least they would have known that it was safe. City Attorney Susanna Wood said in an email statement to Cap Radio that the complaint demonstrates the complexity of the homelessness crisis while underscoring the importance of the multidimensional approach, which I'm not sure what that means exactly, except for the fact that it's a complicated issue. And here's the thing. I think the reason they landed underneath the freeway is because of the NIMBY effect, not in my backyard, right? They couldn't find locations in regular neighborhoods because it's like everyone is concerned about homelessness, but nobody wants to build the solution in their neighborhood. So they found spots underneath the freeway, right, where nobody lives. And as it turns out, it's not very, very safe. It's like, it's something just dawned on me, and I don't know how great of an analogy this is, but I'm just going to throw it out there. When the United States began to put Native Americans on reservations, they would put them on the least desirable land. And the minute they discovered something that was desirable, like oil or uranium, then they moved them to even less desirable land. And it's almost that way with our unhoused population, right? That we could only find the least desirable land in order to build a shelter on, which isn't even housing, right? What else do we got here? So a property owner in North Sacramento who lives near the Railroad Drive shelter, which is also operated by Volunteers of America, filed a lawsuit against the city last week. And it alleges that the owner suffered property damage, had to hire a private security firm. And even though they asked the city to relocate people and clean up the area, there was no action taken. It alleges that the property is located in a containment zone developed by the city that isolated the unhoused folks in a less affluent neighborhood, and that there was no effort to keep our unhoused residents within certain specific parts of the city. So the California Homeless Union, which I've never heard of, denounced the siting plan when it was made public. Crystal Sanchez, president of the Sacramento Homeless Union, compared the X Street shelter to a jail or internment camp. Kind of stretching it, I think. She said in an email to Cap Radio that those who were institutionalized might not go there because it could trigger PTSD. Well, that is an issue for some people who simply can't be indoors for whatever reason, whether it's, finding an apartment to live in or paying for a temporary hotel room. They just can't handle being indoors, for one. For two, some people can't, they get triggered when they're in a setting with other people. They have to be alone, right? Other people trigger them. And so they can't be in a community setting like that. So that's difficult. That is very difficult. Let's see, what else have we got here? So here's something that I find very, very interesting. Richard Hernandez, president of the Newton Booth Neighborhood Association, I'd have to look that up. I have no idea where that is, said he recognizes the Navigation Center as a good structure and that people in his neighborhood are excited and supportive of the endeavor. But he also feels unheard by the city. While the plan was being drafted, he shared his concerns about the overconcentration of sites with council member Katie Valenzuela. He felt betrayed when her assurances that the plan would change weren't reflected. Now, of course, we don't know the whole story there. There may be a reason, a very valid reason, why changes could not be implemented, but we just don't know. There were some neighborhoods that were on the WX corridor and all in the Midtown area, but there were some neighborhoods in some portions of Sacramento that didn't even get patched. And we felt that they should have had their fair share, if you will, he said. So, that's the problem. I mean, there are neighborhoods that will not allow, because that was part of the city's plan, right, was to allocate sites throughout the city where housing could be built or shelters could be built. They wanted each district to identify sites so that it could be spread out throughout the city. Problem being that the districts, they couldn't find any. People wouldn't let it happen. So here's another shot of the inside of the shelter. So this is a very temporary situation. You've got no privacy. And, you know, we haven't seen anywhere, or I don't know if they've got lockers to store their personal belongings, or what they would do, store them under their bed. I have no idea. See what else we got here. Concerns about inequitable distribution of sites were also brought up when the plan was first made public, with Faye Wilson Kennedy from the Poor People's Campaign noting most of the existing recently built shelters were in areas where high populations of people of color. She said that follows a historic pattern of wealthier communities not wanting to shoulder the provision of services to low-income Black and brown folks. She said that solutions needed to be spread throughout all communities. That was the idea. That was the idea that was conceived, but the follow-through just didn't happen that way, right? So Mr. Hernandez said he was also concerned about whether the city had thought through the implications of building homes under a freeway. It's been my experience that the city doesn't always do its due diligence in talking to the available agencies and community groups in planning these things, making sure that all of the stakeholders are at the table. I don't know, but it's been my experiences that doesn't always happen. That there's cursory outreach, but not a very thorough outreach. That may have been what happened here. I don't know. So anyway, so if granted, the lawsuit would stop city construction on any current projects in the siting plan until the city complied with the CEQA, the Environmental Quality Assurance. Yeah. So that's where that's at. I don't know if there's an injunction while the lawsuit's in progress. We'll see if once it goes to court, whether an injunction's filed before there's a final decision made. But that's where we're at. Yeah. That's where we're at. So anyway, yeah, it's not easy. You know, the homelessness issue is not easy at all in any way, shape, or form. So those were the two topics that I thought I wanted to talk about tonight. Thanks for listening. Those are my opinions, right? Not everybody agrees. That's what makes the world go round. So I've got headphones on. What does that mean? It can only mean one thing. So the first thing I need to do is where's my cursor? Oh, there you are. Okay, I'm going to turn off my Do Not Disturb. That means that the phone is active. It's active. Yes, it's active. And let's see, somewhere around here. Oh, yeah. I've got a phone. Yay. And I've got a phone number. There it is. So, phone number is area code 916-545-5376. Wait, you know what? I got to do one more thing, which I'd forgotten to do. Make sure my loop back is turned on, and it's not, so bear with me before you try calling. I can't hear you if you do. So I've got to flip over to another little gizmo that I have, and hopefully I have 2 more days for the free demo, and then I will have to pay for it. So let's get this up here and get this turned on. And I think we're going now. Okay, so now we're good to go. If anyone wants to give me a call, I can do that. We can do that. Otherwise, we'll just chit-chat a little bit more. I'm going to close some of these tabs up here. We've looked at what I wanted to look at tonight. Because there's a lot going on, They're still wrangling about the infrastructure bill in Washington, D.C. Who knows what's going to happen with that? I have no idea. So we'll wait and see. There was an article that said that the Taliban in Afghanistan wants to be included in the UN. They want to have a seat in the UN because they are the government there. So now they're discussing that, whether they'll let the Taliban, Afghan government, have a seat in the UN. That'll be interesting. What else is going on? Have to wait and see. I think there's a lot of states now that are gearing up to do redistricting, which is going to have a major effect on the elections next year. We'll see how that goes. And, right now that there's not a whole lot else going on in this country that I'm too tapped into. If there's something that I'm not paying attention to that you would like to bring to my attention, that'd be great. You can either give me a call or put it in the chat, and we'll take a look. We'll see if we can look it up here. So there you have it. Hope everybody is well. Thanks again for joining me this evening. It's a beautiful evening. The moon has been gorgeous. Big, full, bright moon. And Jupiter's been right there. Jupiter's been playing tag with the moon these last few nights. So that's kind of cool to see. Saturn apparently is not far away, although it's dimmer. Jupiter's quite bright. So if you see the moon, you see a bright star. It's not a star, it's a planet. And that'd be Jupiter, which is cool. That's pretty cool to see that stuff. If you've got some powerful binoculars or a little telescope, you can zoom in on it and actually see the moons of Jupiter, from what I understand. So what do we got here? What about the scandal of Shang-Chi release on Disney Plus being delayed a month? I don't know anything about that at all. So part of the scandal, and my buddy Dave here has brought me up to speed on some of it in the past. A lot of movies, Disney, Marvel, this is a Marvel movie. Shang-Chi is a Marvel movie. But the last few Marvel movies, they have at least one. It was Black Widow. They released on Disney Plus, so you could stream it at the same time they released it in the theaters. This time, they're not releasing it on their streaming service. They're releasing it into the theaters only. And so my guess is the scandal is that they're looking at, is this a gender issue? I guess. Or an ethnic issue, maybe. I don't know. Let's see here. I'm going to give it a real quick Google search. So let's see. Shang-Chi scandal. See if anything comes up. Now, here's the controversy. Okay. Oh, let's take a look at this. Be back with you in a second. Let me pull it up. Let me make these a little bit bigger. And, oh, that's nice and big. Okay, here we go. So let's go ahead and pull this up and take a looky at it. So I'm going to hide you, my friend Dave, for the moment. And we're going to bounce over to this website and see what we can see and educate ourselves. Let's see here. Here we go. Shang-Chi debuts first trailer, but racism controversy persists among Chinese audience. This is the Global Times. There may be another scandal, but this is one that I found right away. This is the guy on the right in the hoodie is the star of the movie. He's a Chinese actor, and then the guy to the left in the white is a Chinese-Canadian actor. Wait. Oh, time out. I had it backwards. The guy on the left is a Chinese actor, and the guy who plays the role of Shang-Chi is the Chinese-Canadian actor. All right. Okay. There you have that. So what's the story here? Okay, their new superhero movie, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, were postponed due to COVID. Okay, the production and screening. Released a new trailer on Monday, but many Chinese moviegoers seem underwhelmed by the first Asian hero in the Marvel Universe. while racism debates surrounding the movie recurred. Interesting. It's a 125-second trailer. Let's see. The trailer intrigued foreign Marvel fans and kung fu movie lovers compared to the works of Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee. But the Chinese market appears less excited. Now, a lot of Hollywood is really keyed in on China because the Chinese market apparently is huge. So they don't want to do anything that's going to disgruntle that Chinese market because there's so much money to be made there, right? Let's see what the dealio is. Global Times found many Chinese netizens' first impression of the film was that its story is associated with an early 20th century novel featuring Fu Manchu, a representative of the Yellow Peril in the West. The connection already sparked controversy in 2019 when Marvel announced the project. Okay, so this controversy has nothing to do with the delay of the release. It has to do with Chinese history in the United States. How interesting. This is completely different, Dave. I didn't know about this. Do you know about this? I didn't know about this. A Beijing-based film critic told the Global Times on Tuesday that the movie could be sold to some for its oriental elements and the presence of Tony Leung maybe, who plays the role of Shang-Chi's father, but whether it can be a success depends on the story itself and how it's told. Some Chinese netizens compared Shang-Chi to Mulan, another Disney movie that had ambitions to conquer the Chinese market, but eventually failed in both box office and reputation. Wow. Interesting. So, well, I didn't plan on that. Didn't see that coming. Did you see that coming? I didn't see that coming. All right. Now I'm back. Okay, so let me see if there's another one here. Shang-Chi stream delay. Okay, I see what's up. So I don't see. Oh, here's something from Tech Radar. It's the name of the website. See what they have to say here. I don't know. I don't see it. So Dave, I don't see an article talking about a controversy about delaying the movie. What I'm seeing is that by not putting it out on the streaming service, that they're going to lose a lot of money because in some areas there's an uptick on COVID-19, and if they're only going to show it in the box office, people aren't going to go see it. So they're wondering about the wisdom in making it box office only and not streaming at the same time. But for issues, I'm going to try one more little thing here. Let's try one more little thing. Shang-Chi gender delay. See if I put in the right code words. I don't know. Bum 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 bum. Put in another word here. Let's see here. I don't know. I'm just not finding it. Let me see. Nope. Anyway, it's probably out there. I just don't find it. I just can't find it quickly. So sorry about that, dude. Oh, here's another comment that I'd missed here. Shang-Chi was originally set to stream 45 days after theaters, which would have been mid-October. But Disney is pushing it back to mid-November now. Scandal is your perspective. Yeah, maybe did Disney come out with any type of a rationale for doing that? I don't know. I don't know. Seems weird though they would push it back, um, especially since a lot of people are now projecting very low box office returns. Um, and after reading what I read about China, it may not do well in China. So um, I don't know. Oh, so they want to coordinate the release of the movie on their streaming service with the anniversary of Disney Plus, or like in order to celebrate releasing it. Yeah, it does sound that way. However, um, I think it's more expensive to stream it than it is to see it in the theater, isn't it? Although, I mean, if you've got a group of people watching it, then they're sharing the cost, so it's not. They don't have to buy individual tickets. So yeah, but if people aren't going to go see it because of the rise in COVID cases, then that may be a problem. I don't know. At least I don't know, something for Disney to work out. It's unfortunate because personally, and I know you and I have talked about it a lot, but personally, I don't feel comfortable going to a theater with people that I don't know, and being in there for such a long period of time. Um, I'm sure it's fine, but I just have to deal with my own comfort level. Let's see. Now, it would be included with the subscription. With Black Widow, they charge $30 for streaming at the same time as the theaters. Oh, I see. So if they delayed it 45 days, as long as you had the service, you could play the movie and it wouldn't cost you any extra. They charged extra for Black Widow because it was streaming at the same time as it came out at the theaters, which they could do for Shang-Chi, right? They could. But, Black Widow is a known commodity. Shang-Chi's a brand new character who hasn't been on, not brand new, but this is the first movie, right? So they don't know how it's going to go over. It may be a screaming success. Who knows? I know that when they did Black Panther, they weren't sure how that was going to go over, and it was a wild success. So who knows? And it could also be not a big success at all because of the timing of the thing. We still got this pandemic going on. They probably thought that by now it would be more under wraps. It's moving in a good direction, but it's far from over, right? So it doesn't make any sense why they wouldn't put it out streaming at the same time. I mean, you don't get the same amenities. I mean, the theater experience is fun. You got the sound and your chairs vibrate, and you got popcorn, and you got all kinds of fun stuff. And, it's a great experience being in a theater and watching a movie. But if people don't feel safe, then they might not go. So that's a risk, right? That's a risk. Yeah. So, and I don't mind waiting to see it. If, and it's not high up on my list of things to see. There's a couple things I want to see. So I want to see Dune. So I'm really debating whether I want to chance it in the theaters or not. It's in October, so maybe by then, maybe not. December. So if I get my booster shot in November, then Matrix 4 comes out in December. And that's another one I really, really want to see. So I think Dune and Matrix 4 are movies that I want to really see. And then Shang-Chi would be one that definitely would be on that list, which is HBO is streaming Dune at the same time as theaters. Yeah, so that's a great idea. I think they're doing it right. The thing about Dune, and I've been following it along, is that apparently when it opens, it's going to say Dune Part 1. So HBO is also streaming Matrix at the same time. So it's all going to depend on where we're at with COVID. I mean, we may see an uptick as we move into the winter months, right? Because that's what tends to happen. But we'll see. But if not, and I get my booster shot, then I might just risk seeing Matrix 4 in the big theater just because it's Matrix 4. But, the fact that it's going back to Dune Part 1, does that mean that they're splitting the Dune story into Part 1 and Part 2? Does it mean that they're going to do all of Dune in Part 1 and then Part 2 is going to be the next story? Because Frank Herbert wrote a lot of books about Dune with the Dune theme. I don't know. It'd be very, very interesting to see how they play that out. But even though it says Part 1, apparently they haven't even begun Part 2. They're not even sure they're going to be able to do Part 2. So it's going to say Part 1, but there may never, ever be a Part 2. Or it could be like Blade Runner, right? You make Blade Runner, and then, I don't know, 20 some odd years later, they come out with the second movie. And apparently they're working on Blade Runner 3. That will be really interesting. They've already hired a bunch of people for continuity to look at all the both the Blade Runner and the second movie to make sure they've got continuity going into a third movie. 2 movies for the main story. So it's kind of sad because, Kill Bill was great. I loved Kill Bill. And that was exactly the right way to do that because it was a long movie. It would have been way too long to put it into one movie probably. But they made both movies. And the problem with Dune breaking it into 2 movies is the second movie's not guaranteed yet. So we may get partway through it and never see the finish of it. That would be really, really sad. Really, really sad. But the nice thing is, even though it's an older movie, came out in the 80s, the David Lynch version of Dune, to me, is still a really fun movie to watch. I really like it. It's very entertaining, very well done. Even though the special effects are old, and you can tell they're old, it's still a great story. They told a great story, yeah. So we'll just have to wait and see. So anyway, I just glanced up at the time, and it's a little after 8 o'clock. So, if David Lynch hates that movie, I don't care. He doesn't have to like it. Liking something is completely subjective. Some people like things that I don't like. And it's not because they're not good things. It's because I just don't like them for whatever reason, right? Their inherent quality has got nothing to do with how I feel about it, because that's entirely subjective. So, and David Lynch is kind of an eccentric kind of person. So I'm not surprised he didn't like it. And especially looking back now, let's see, I think it was 86 came out, somewhere in there. 96, 2006, 16. So it's like 35 years old. That's crazy. That's old, right? So, I can understand looking back on it and saying, wasn't that great? Well, it was great for the time, I think, when it came out. But, he's entitled to his own opinions on his own movie, right? Of course. All right, so let's turn off some things here. Let's get ready to call it an evening. So I'm going to get my cursor up here. And wrong button. It's really important to pick the right button. There you go. All right, put my phone back on Do Not Disturb. So now we're getting ready to just call it an evening. So thank you very much for being with me tonight. It's been a lot of fun. I've had a blast. And if you've been here with me live, thank you very much. And if you joined on the recording, even still, thank you very much. So have a great weekend. Stay safe. God bless. And I'll see you next week.